Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for the natal sun in the 5th house. And just to kind of review what the sun's function is, this is our ego. And the word ego gets a bad rap. There's actually a healthy ego, in my opinion. And this is our sense of self as an individual. So how we distinguish ourselves from others, what kind of talents we possess, personality we possess that makes us stand out. And knowing that, some people don't know who they are as individuals, and they're kind of open for suggestions from others. But when you have a strong sense of what you're all about, that to me is the healthy ego. The sun is also our sense of purpose. So we know who we are, and then we know what we came here to do, who we came here to be. And it's also our personality. And so this is another area where some people kind of are colored by their environment, and they're chameleons, and they change depending on where they are. But if you have a core personality, it kind of follows you wherever you go. But I guess even if you are a chameleon, that just is your personality too, I guess. I think I said I guess twice, didn't I? So the 5th house, what does that represent? Well, that's the house of love. That's a house of pleasure, fun. And pleasure and fun aren't really synonymous. Well, to me, pleasure is sensual, and fun can just be like things that are your hobbies, that are interesting to you, exciting. Creative self-expression is the 5th house, so any kind of creative pursuits, art, things that you do along those lines. Hobbies, of course, some of these things are kind of like overlapping, I guess. Sports. Some people are very serious about their sports. Some people are doing it as a hobby. Some people, when I say serious, they might even want to do it for a living. And other games that you can have competition and things like that. Gambling is the 5th house. And now this is an interesting one, obsessions. So if, one of the sites, I believe it was Codex, because that was the source that I used for this one. Very good site to look up different astrological things. But one of the things that they said was that even some people's hobbies are obsessions, which is certainly true. But now that I think about it, love can be an obsession. You could fall in love with somebody and really be obsessed with that person. The 5th house, and I didn't see this when I looked up some of these keywords. I didn't see recreational sex. And also, come to think of it, conceiving children. Children in general are the 5th house, but conceiving children, specifically in recreational sex, which is a form of pleasure, isn't it? And flirting, falling in love. The first child, now that was a new one on me. And here's a fun little factoid. If you want to predict the gender of your first child, look to see, and you have the sun in the 5th house, it's going to be a boy probably. Other planets can indicate gender too, so I'm assuming that Venus would be a girl and Mars would be a boy, and yada yada. So the 5th house is also your inner child, and it's how, when you were a child, you interacted with your environment. Now, the 4th house is your basic childhood, like the circumstances in your childhood, but the 5th house could be how you interacted with it. So let's give an example of that. Let's say that you have Saturn in the 4th house, and you grew up in a family that was quite austere. So you might not have had a lot of affection growing up, and it might have been a very bleak household. And the father might have been the cause for this austerity, or maybe there was financial problems or restraint, or you just have to start working at a young age, and you didn't feel like you had much of a childhood. But what if you have in your 5th house, what if your sun is there? You may have still retained joy in your environment, even though you didn't have, on paper, you might not have had something, but you still were able to find joy in that environment. Maybe there were outside forces that gave you that sense of enthusiasm for life. And so you didn't get it within the home, but you got it from other places. And you retain that inner child. People with the sun in the 5th house are going to have a very playful personality. And that is indicative of somebody who hasn't lost their inner child. We all know people who go through life overly serious. And I think sometimes they think that that makes them a grown-up because they are being serious. And some people that are a little bit spontaneous, and they may be willing to look silly now and then, and they just have like this playful demeanor, they can be judged as immature, if they are adults and they're doing that, which is sad because this is actually a very good quality to have. So I always say childlike, not childish. This type of person may have enjoyed being the center of attention from an early age. And they naturally gravitate towards the limelight, but they also may be seen, maybe they're seen by others as someone to gravitate around. And by the way, I just wanted to say too that the 5th house is celebration, like parties and partying. So that can also be the type of person who's kind of a playboy or a playgirl, and a partier, somebody who just enjoys going out on the town and stuff like that. Now, going back to childhood, the girls could be tomboys, because if a girl has the sun in the 5th house, that's a masculine energy in the house that it rules. I don't think I said that. So the sun rules the sign of Leo, and it's associated with the 5th house. So it's that masculine energy. The boys are masculine. They give off that masculine vibe. And again, they can be competitive, both genders. This is the person who is a natural performer, especially if they have aspects with Venus and or Neptune. That can also indicate artistic talents and proclivities in this area. And I would add a natural extroverted personality. So if the person is a Cancer sun or a Virgo sun, this can certainly make them more gregarious and confident and less of a wallflower. I remember one time I did a video about Virgo, and I said something about them being wallflowers, and I got all these thumbs down. So I have to watch myself when I diss Virgos like that. Or I'm really not dissing them. I really do think that there are certain signs that are more unassuming and more even insecure. And insecurity is not like the end of the world. Okay, I have the moon in Virgo myself, but the sun gives vitality, okay? And as I said, it can be the ego. And when it's in the fifth house, it strengthens that ego. Sometimes, to an adverse level where it becomes full-blown egotism. Okay? But anyway, their first child can be a male, as I said, because this is the house of the first child, and this is a masculine planet. This can be a person who has a profession that is along the lines of a performer. Again, I talked about artistic self-expression, or a teacher, but of children, or any kind of career that children are involved. So I could even see like a coach because of the athletic connection. As I said, this could be the person who loves to go out on the town. If the person has, this is the house of gambling, but if they have hard angles, if you have hard angles like oppositions or squares to Mars, Saturn, Neptune, or Pluto, this can indicate gambling problems. So watch out for that. So a tendency to have a gambling addiction. I did read somewhere that the fifth house is addiction in general. I didn't see that when I was looking at the website, but I do know also that the 12th house is associated with addiction. So I think with the fifth house, it's more of like too much of a good thing where the person enjoys, pleasure and they overdo it. Whereas, okay, so we're talking about the sign of Leo and overdoing that pleasure in the 12th house, which is ruled by Neptune and Pisces. There can be addiction that is coming from the person practicing or engaging in escapism. And a lot of times, because the 12th house can represent fantasy and self-undoing, the person just may have a self-destructive streak. And when I get to the sun in the 12th house, I'll get more into that. So I'm trying to differentiate between the 5th and the 12th houses. I think that with the 5th house, it's just that the person has a natural tendency to enjoy having fun. And sometimes people overdo it and they, do it too often. And that leads to addiction in that sense. So, in other words, it's not coming from a place of suffering so much as overindulgence. Now, this can be, as I said, the house of love, but this could be with the sun that the person has a tendency to fall in love over and over again. And this is just a very romantic nature, and it's funny that I didn't happen to see that word being used, but definitely with the Leo influence, this is certainly the case. And the problem is that if the person gets addicted to that rush of falling in love, which is what this is, the 7th house is committed partnership, so it's that sustained relationship. This is kind of like when you're falling in love, there's that intoxicating period. Anybody who has ever fallen in love knows that there is these, probably endorphins are released at that time. When you're first infatuated with somebody, it's probably the house of infatuation. And that is its own kind of high. And when the person gets addicted to that newness of that relationship, and especially, I would say, a fire sign individual with the sun in the 5th house, particularly Aries, and possibly Leo, since Leo rules this house. And I would say also Gemini, because Gemini loves novelty. And maybe even Pisces, because Pisces is a dual sign as well. And Pisces, I think, can be a fickle sign, being a mutable sign. So these kinds of signs, and also romantic with the ruler Neptune, they may have a tendency to fall in love at the drop of a hat, and therefore wreak havoc in their own personal life. Maybe there's a lot of drama with their love life because of this. And I didn't even think about this. I'm just adding this on my own, but maybe I was baby mama drama. Because that idea of recreational sex leading to making babies and having different children that and also connected to that romantic nature. So when these people have kids, they might lack a forethought and just trying to have fun, trying to sow one's oats or achieve pleasure and not being responsible with it, and just procreating mindlessly, endlessly, that can create drama as well. I'm kind of like going off on my own tangent thinking about that. So when these people have kids, they might be like big kids, and the other parent is like the adult in the room, unless the other adult has the sun in Leo or the sun in the 5th house. This kind of person is very fun-loving, and they're fun to be around as a result. And they're probably always laughing. They're probably positive. And the biggest thing I think besides the partying that they have to watch out for is an overblown ego. But typically, I think that these people are probably generous, and they mean well, and they're warm-hearted. So, again, if the sun is in Capricorn, they may be an uncharacteristically playful Capricorn, maybe a little bit less serious. Or, the kind of Capricorn that instead of goes into a field like, accounting or something with the monetary system, goes into entertainment field. So, so anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you'd like a private natal chart interpretation, I have the link below for that. So take care. Thanks for listening. Bye.